Hey there, shooters. Mike Seeklander with Wilson Combat, and in today's episode of Going Tactical, I'm going to talk to you about the double action trigger pull. Of course, today I'm using the Wilson Combat Beretta 92G Vertec with the modified grip. This is one of their newer models that I really happen to like. And I'm going to teach you about the double action trigger pull, as well as define the single action trigger pull and the difference between the two, just in case you're a new shooter and maybe you don't own your first double action gun yet. And then we're going to talk about how to learn the management of that double action pull seamlessly so you can really integrate it with live fire. Now, of course, I'm out on the range, but today's drill is a dry fire only drill. So you don't have to leave your house. Just pay attention to what I'm about to teach you and then make sure you practice this material, okay? So let's define the trigger pulls first. Of course, an unloaded and empty gun. So let me be specific about this. In any double action gun or double action semi-automatic, you're going to find both a single action pull, and you can see on this Vertec the hammer's back. So this is the single action pull in the gun. And then if I leave the hammer forward, obviously because I didn't shoot live fire and pull the trigger right now, this is the double action. So double action simply means that I'm doing two actions with one trigger pull. I'm cocking the hammer and then releasing the hammer with that trigger pull. In a semi-auto, granted, the double action pull would fire and then the slide would cycle, and then every round after that on this particular firearm would be a single action pull. But the biggest thing we need to learn how to manage is that double action pull. The simple reason being, with the single action pull, now bear with me now, is very, very light, and the distance to pull the trigger and actually make the gun go off is very short. So watch the single action pull one more time. Very, very light and just a little bit of movement. This particular gun has a very good trigger, but it's very easy to make the gun go off. Contrast that to the double action pull, where the trigger weight is actually very heavy and the trigger manipulation is much longer. I mean, literally, it's probably 6 or 7 times longer to pull that trigger pull on a double action trigger pull versus a single action pull, okay? Now, I'm gonna give you the first secret of the day. Pay attention to this. When I'm gripping the handgun, if I have the perfect grip with my strong hand on the handgun, I want you to pay attention to these fingers. When I'm managing the double action trigger pull, the biggest thing that I see my students do wrong is, as they're pulling the trigger, they're gripping with these fingers. Okay, I call that gripping and pulling at the same time. The problem with that is, if I'm gripping and pulling the trigger at the same time, I want you to watch the front of the gun. It moves. Now, if the gun is moving in dry fire, if I take the same firearm and go out and shoot on a still target right now, and I grip and pull at the same time, I'm actually moving the gun as I'm making the gun go off, which is a bad thing. So the first thing that I want you to focus on your double action pull is gripping. Now these 3 fingers are fully gripped. Okay, you could probably see a little bit of blood because I'm really squeezing the grip really hard. And then once I've gripped, there's no longer any motion left. So now I can actually pull the trigger without moving the gun. I'm not gripping and pulling, I gripped, then I manage the trigger, okay? Now, in terms of how you work this, I want to point out one more thing. When you're managing the double action trigger pull, let's say you have a good trigger like this, and let's say it's a 12 or 13 pound trigger. The last thing that I want you to do is build your grip and fully extend the handgun and then start the work on the trigger, because that means once the gun stops, I have all of those 13 pounds of work left to do. What I'd rather you do is manage the grip like we've taught you in previous videos. If you remember this point, this is called the trigger guard index point or the Judy chop. So I want you to work on building your grip, and about the time your support hand, in my case, my left hand, gets on the grip panel, my trigger finger is going to enter the trigger guard, and I'm going to start to manage the trigger to the rear as the gun is coming to a stop. So if you watch my hammer on this handgun, right now I probably applied 8 pounds out of the 13 pounds it takes to shoot it. So if I've already applied 8 pounds out of the 13 pounds it takes to shoot it, as I'm extending the gun, I've already done some of the work on the trigger. And remember, the less work I have to do once the gun's fully extended, the faster I could shoot that shot and the more chance I'm gonna have of firing an accurate shot. So here's what I want you to practice. I want you to make sure you have your strong hand up the back strap of the grip. When we have that strong hand on the back strap of the grip, the trigger finger is up and off the trigger, and my strong hand thumb is flagged. You should remember that from previous videos, and if you don't, go back and watch those previous Going Tactical episodes. There are really key details in some of those videos. Number 2, I've figured out where to place my left hand by building the grip in reverse. And I notice when I build the grip in reverse, this is the spot where my trigger guard touches my index finger, okay? So I know my touch point, my Judy chopper, my trigger guard index point, call it whatever you want. So I'm gonna have you start from there. And then we're gonna practice building the grip. And right about where my left hand lays into position, my trigger finger is gonna enter the trigger guard, and I'm gonna start managing that double action trigger pull as I facilitate my grip. At about full and final extension, I've got most of the trigger pull done, and I'm simply gonna continue to press the trigger to the rear and not move anything else. And that's the key. Listen to that one more time. And not move anything else. Meaning, by the time the gun gets to full extension, I've already gripped down with my left hand, or excuse me, my three fingers, so they can no longer move. Consequently, when the gun stops and I manage the trigger the rest of the way, nothing moves in the gun. And when you watch your front sight in relation to the target in the rear sight, there should be no movement whatsoever. It shouldn't dip. It shouldn't move to the left. It should literally not move whatsoever. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to do 30 reps of the following drill. And if you're motivated, do 50 reps, or maybe you're super motivated, then do 5,000. But work the skill perfectly every time. So I'm going to work on building my grip, and I want you to watch the hammer. The hammer's going to the rear as I'm building the grip. Fire a shot. Pay attention to the hammer. I'll do this one nice and slow. Hammer's coming back. No movement of the sights. And remember, when I'm doing this drill, I'm gripping the gun hard. I'm not relaxed on my grip. I'm literally gripping it to the point where I'm gripping it as hard as I can without shaking, okay? A couple more reps. I'll pick the pace up on this one. Build the grip, fire the shots. Build the grip, fire a shot. Build the grip, fire a shot. And notice how I'm presenting the handgun, literally straight to the target. Build the grip, fire a shot. Now, of course, all of the other principles apply. If you could feel what my calves feel like right now, they'd be kind of tense and feel like they're full of blood because I'm putting pressure on my calves. Whenever you're doing any dry fire drill, you need to mimic all of the same things you do during live fire. So get athletic in your lower body. Grip the gun hard when you're doing your training reps. Present the gun on the exact same path that you would want to present it if you were doing a live fire drill. Mimic the exact same things that you want to do in live fire. And that repetitive motion will myelinate that pathway and build that habit, and then give you the results that you want to have later on when you're actually shooting your gun. All right, so there you have it. Some mechanics and talk about double action trigger pulls, how we manage that double action trigger as we're building the grip, how we stabilize the gun, and more importantly, how to do it in the safety of your own home. So rep it out, get your practice reps on, and when I come back next, I'm going to show you a live fire drill where we're putting it all together.